Dismantling. Call Joel, evenings, 623-9765. Smack in the public eye at 9th and Van Buren, tearing down an old house. Not demolition, dismantling, says Joel. Slowly, we make the house disappear. It takes a few months. We do this for a living. Our sign says, used lumber for sale. Neat stacks of it on the front lawn around a dormant forsythia. Shiplap and siding. And over here we have 2x. That pile is already sold. We also have toilets, sinks, remarkable savings on bent nails, French doors, free kindling, and more. Lots more. With the roof off, a house looks more like a cathedral. Rafters outlined against the sky. A pair of ragged priests, stick by stick. We celebrate nothing. We are making the shape of nothing, creating an absence. And when we have finished, what will there be at 9th and Van Buren? A square of bare earth where a house was. Sidewalk, foundation, concrete stoop, 2 steps up, and you're there. I've been writing for 60 years. I'm going to be 81 later this month, so I've been writing for a long time. I published my first book just shortly before I was 60 years old. I've been writing for 30 years before I published a book. But I've published now 7 books since then, and the latest book is a book of collected poems. It's called Cathedrals and Parking Lots, collected poems. Well, I started writing, as any poet does, imitating traditional English poetry, writing sonnets and villanelles and rhymed stanzas and so forth and so on. And I always knew that I would not be able to make a living as a poet. No poets make a living as such. So I wound up becoming a carpenter. I fell into the carpentry trade. I went through the carpentry apprenticeship program in San Francisco in the early 60s. And it really suited me so well. I was so happy working as a carpenter, and it fitted in with my writing. So I began to write in a more freer, a looser form than I had been writing at that time. And I began writing about the work situation, jobs that I was on.
So your approach to your poetry is kind of the same as your approach to life?
Sure.
And what is your approach to life?
I try to live as simply, as honestly, as truly as I can. So I would say the same of my poetry. An attempt to be honest, to be realistic. Niagara Cyclo-Massage. Tommy Sotelo and I were selling Niagara Cyclo-Massage at a booth we'd been assigned to in a shopping mall on the outskirts of San Francisco. Tommy had bad teeth and he couldn't stay off the bottle. He had quit his job as a cook or been fired. A few months earlier, I'd been paid off a ship in Oakland. We were both making a career move. By mid-afternoon, my feet hurt, and Tommy's speech was slurred. Attempts to lure passing shoppers into our booth for a demo had met with little success. Evidently, the populace wasn't ready for Niagara Cyclo-Massage. At Monday morning sales meetings, Norm Schwarzenberg pumped us all up like balloons. He spoke rhapsodically of what Niagara had to offer. But it was clear that I wouldn't be making my fortune here. I thought of going back to sea, or else marrying Barbara and raising children. I didn't confide in Tommy. He was proud of his job. "This is my office," he'd say, with arms flung out and a shit-faced grin, standing at the intersection of two aisles in a discount department store. And looking suave in his cheap gray suit with the cufflinks and the pink and gray tie, he'd step out onto the loading dock for a cigarette and a long pull at his flask.
Clem showed up at the Fisher Poets Gathering many years ago. I don't remember how many, but quite a few. And we became friends right away because I have also been a merchant seaman. I was a carpenter on and off for most of my adult life, cabinet maker, and this is his background as well. And so we had that in common, but then he's also an incredibly accomplished poet, and I found that was an inspiration for my own work. So I took inspiration from him and have woven his vernacular into my own writing. He's inspired me to write about work, of which I've done my share over the years in a lot of different ways. I've had a lot of different jobs, but that's kind of the backbone of his poetry, is about the work that he's done and does. I guess we're brothers in a way. Even though he's a little older, we're all in the same clan, you could say. So and then when we became friends, we started talking about his poetry and how it might be nice to combine what we do, John and I, with what he does.
Clem has a distinctive delivery, of course, and we wanted to capture it, and he had never recorded any of his stuff. I said, well, heck, fire, we got to record you. And then we thought, well, maybe we could put a little flavor behind some of the, I don't know where we came up with that idea. But
Well, it was your guys' idea.
yeah, it was
So
fun.
John and I have been playing and writing our own songs for quite a while and performing, so
Right.
it was a natural progression to be able to just do some instrumentals. We didn't have to write the words. He's the word man. So
That's easy.
yeah. So then we were able to branch out because it takes a lot of the pressure off when you are creating just a soundscape rather than the entire package. So
So did you two listen to the poems and devise the soundscape independently of Clem? Oh, okay.
Well, Clem was there, and we said, how's this sound? Does this sound like the poem? And once in a while you develop a soundscape that wasn't the right one, but by and large we came pretty close. Those last several we did without Clem's knowledge. I mean, we said, let's do these poems. It was only this afternoon he heard the soundscape for it, so he approved. We may have to tinker with him a little bit, but
it's sort of driven by there's a particular feel that you're trying to go for. But then also we want to keep some variety in it, so it's sometimes we'll jump from one instrument to another just to mix it up a little bit, and you get some unexpected surprises that way. Get lucky sometimes.
Yeah.
So we made a couple of CDs with him. Then we took it on the road, and we've been all over Washington and Oregon over the years performing with him.
Long Creek, Walla Walla. We'd be drinking at a bar in La Grande on a Saturday night, a few of us from the Duncan section, when all of a sudden somebody'd say, let's go to Long Creek. So we'd pile into the back of his pickup and drive for hours through the vast, sagebrush-scented eastern Oregon night, till we came to a cluster of buildings, a tavern, at a crossroads in the middle of nowhere. Not a whole lot was happening in the Long Creek Tavern, which later I learned was called by the locals a pastime. Jukebox silent, pool table deserted. One lone cowboy and the barmaid palavering. I was trying to figure why we had come and what it all meant. I was new to the West, and distances were improbable. Well, who knows what it meant, and who knows where it was we went from there. Back to work on Monday morning, tamping ballast, lining track, maintaining the 20 miles of Union Pacific roadbed known as the Duncan section. Other weekends it'd be different. We'd be drinking at a bar in Pendleton, and suddenly somebody'd say, "Let's go to Walla Walla."
That there is that sort of thoughtful and very metered delivery with a lot of space. He's not in a hurry, and that's a very important part of how he speaks. So there's lots of space, lots of time to listen to the words. That's another thing that is important, to learn, I think, is to not be in a hurry.
So in the mid-60s, I discovered Chinese poetry in translation. I came across a friend of mine, a poet friend of mine, introduced me to an anthology of Chinese poetry. And I was just so taken with the fact that we're talking classical Chinese poetry. We're talking poetry from 1,000 years ago, 700, 800, AD, as they say. It was so down to earth. It was what we were saying earlier. It was about very mundane things. Just a little bird or a little insect, or just walking along and making these precise observations about what the poet was seeing. That was just so wonderful to me. So the fact that it was in another language, a totally different culture, and 1,000 years ago, and that it spoke to me. I mean, I could feel this human being. He was telling a story about his life on the planet, just like mine, It was just so wonderful. It was so wonderful. Whereas what I found about English poetry, which I've read a lot of, studied, it was much more, I don't know how to say it. It was highfalutin, or an attempt to, like the cathedrals, to address God, to talk lofty, high language and so forth. But the Chinese poetry was so down to earth, so simple, so banal, so mundane, as you said.
No one could accuse you of appealing to the snob appeal.
No. That's for sure. Right.
Can you name a couple Chinese, just for my own interest, poets that I could check into?
Well, they're great Chinese poets. You may know of him as Li Po, L-I-P-O, Li Po, it's really pronounced Li Bo is in Chinese. Or Du Fu, the other great Chinese poet, T-U-F-U, Du Fu. They're both Tang Dynasty from the 8th century. Wang Wei, another Chinese poet. There are dozens and dozens of them. Well, probably hundreds, probably thousands of them, but I know of dozens and dozens of them. Why Buddhists don't kill flies. By actual count, there are 28 flies stuck to the flypaper dangling from a beam in the kitchen. 28 sentient beings. Recorded live in an auditorium far from the Himalayas, the Gyuto monks, a tantric choir, are chanting making unearthly sounds. My wife and I are at the table, drinking coffee, listening. Our daughter's perfume floats down the stairs, impinging on us. This table measures 3.5 foot by 6. On it are books and flowers, a basket of tangerines. If you ask, I will say, we are happy. And if you ask why Buddhists don't kill flies, figure it yourself. Exiled monks, 28 flies, a kitchen in Oregon, a mountain in Tibet. Well, I'll tell you what, I think poetry is the highest use to which language can be put. You know, it's a high form of communication. It's communicating with people, you know, on a supra-verbal level, you know, which is a little bit of what, you know, we're saying earlier about, you know, taking the mundane, but somehow it having an element of the spiritual.
Okay.
Do you guys foresee a future in this?
Well, we are in the future. This is 9 years in,
Yeah.
I guess, or
I
whatever.
mean, what is this is the 10th or the 11th time that we've
Yeah.
done a performance like this. You know?
So, yeah, we anticipate a future, sure.
There are going to be new poems, so there'll be new music, right?
Well, tonight there was 11 pieces, or 10 or 11 pieces that we hadn't done before.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
Wow.
almost half the
Almost half the program today,
Program was-
tonight was new stuff.
things we hadn't
Yeah.
done before.
Had you rehearsed these 11, these new 11, had you rehearsed them?
No, just this afternoon a little bit.
John and I kind of cooked up
Yeah.
the format, and then we sharpened it up a little bit this afternoon. Yeah. We like to not practice things too much. Got to keep a little spontaneity in the mix.
So I've lived an interesting life, and I've got a lot of stories to tell, and so I basically have told the stories of my life.